Welcome back to SnowRunner, guys, and today we are going to be once again revisiting the Classics Workshop of CCM. Now, these mods are actually really interesting because they're always based off of some kind of classic truck, and today's gameplay, or at least I should say this video's gameplay, was recorded on an Xbox Series X, and this truck is fully available on all consoles as of the time of recording this video. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into the specifics of this truck, covering the customization and much more. Now, this truck had some very interesting standout features. Now, the gearbox and engine options are very simple. It's literally, for gearboxes, you get the normal one, the highway one, and the off-road one. There's nothing crazy about it. Suspension, you get 3 options. Once again, nothing crazy. There's nothing over the top. There's nothing that you have to do any guesswork on. It literally is exactly as it appears. Now, for tires, you have actually a pretty good selection of highway, all-terrain, off-road, and so on, and we actually ended up going with Tega tires on this build. And what's interesting about the Tega tires is I think a lot of people got, pardon my pun here, but they sort of got quote-unquote tired of them because they were popping up on so many modified trucks that people were like, oh my god, look, it's Tega tires again. But really and truly, they are a wonderful tire, and they do actually work on this truck. They do look good, in my opinion. They may not look good on this truck in your opinion, but in my opinion, I think they actually suit the task pretty well. Now, as you'll find out later on in the video, you'll want to use the flatbed if you want to do cargo hauling. I had some particular loading issues with the sideboard bed, as I will go into detail on later, but the firewood is super cool because you can actually haul, well, I say haul, you can actually keep auxiliary fuel in that firewood, and it's just kind of an interesting additional set piece that is then made functional. Now, as we move towards the trailer store, you'll notice right off the bat that there are no trailers available for this truck, which was kind of a weird thing to me. I assumed it would be able to pull at the very least scout trailers, but it turns out that that is not the case. So you're not going to be pulling anything with this thing, not even like a little radar trailer. That seems to be completely out of the picture. Now, this is where things started to get a little odd, because I really like the sides on this bed, but it turns out that there's a little bit of an odd glitch that comes along with loading it. Now, as I was going through the cargo selection, I was wondering to myself, I was like, why is this not able to load? And I was like, well, maybe there's some sort of glitch with the actual truck itself. That was my initial thought process. So what I did was I actually spawned in a 1-unit piece of cargo right there on the loading platform, went and grabbed the big heavy Azov and threw a crane on it, brought it out of the garage, and I was like, oh, I'll just go ahead and load this thing. It should be fairly straightforward. Wasn't actually the case, though. Now, as I began the loading process, I actually ended up getting a very odd message on screen that I will show you guys later, and I hadn't really ever experienced this message before, and as you'll be able to see, I sort of drove around a little bit, tried to kind of play with the truck, play with the positioning of the cargo, and it never quite felt completely right. Like, the game never really fully liked what I was trying to do, and I figured that this particular piece of cargo would be able to just barely fit inside the bed sides, but it turns out there seems to be a bit of a conflict between the size of, the width of the bed sides and the size of the cargo itself. Now, I dropped the cargo, and initially I was like, oh, I just didn't set it down right. And then I tried to pack it, and I got this very strange message, because what's interesting is normally if your packing surface is too small for the given cargo, the game won't even let you click the pack button. But in this case, it actually lets you click the pack button, but it still won't actually let you pack it. And so at that point, I was like, okay, there's something weird going on here. I'm gonna need the flatbed. And so I just gave up the cargo, went back into the garage, grabbed the flatbed option, and then at that point, I seemed to be good to go. And once again, you'll notice when we get back into the cargo area, the crane wasn't even necessary at that point. It literally would just quick load fine, and it was completely 100% good to go, as you'll see here. So pull right in, service spare parts loads right up. Now, I decided to go with something a little bit different than the service spare parts. I believe I decided to go with a secure container just because I wanted to do something a little bit different, and I don't usually haul these, and so I thought it would be an interesting test of this particular truck. Now, what I actually like about it, though, is the flatbed surface itself is pretty wide. I mean, you have a pretty good size area to play with when you're driving this truck, and in terms of trucks that haul 1 unit of cargo apiece, this one isn't all that bad. And once again, I think the desire for having a trailer was pretty high. I mean, and I'm not saying it needs goosenecks, but at the same time, the ability to pull, say, for example, Scout flatbeds would be awesome. It really kind of does feel like it's lacking that ability, and maybe the ability to pull trailers was not what was originally envisioned for this build, and I can respect that. If that was not the original vision for this mod, I completely 100% understand and respect that, and understand the modder's decision to not put those in. Now, when I decided to do the hill climb test, I figured early on that I was going to lose my cargo, but I just wanted to see how dramatic of an angle I could get to when that happened. And it turns out it was actually a little bit more of a dramatic angle than I thought it would be. I thought it was going to fall off a little bit earlier than that, but it fell off about halfway up the hill, which I feel like is pretty acceptable when you're talking about a truck like this. Now, one of the weird things about running the logs, or I should say really the firewood, the chopped up firewood, on the back of the truck when you're not using that sectioned off bed is the fact that the gravity is a little weird. You've got one of the pieces of firewood just kind of hanging out towards the edge, and, you know, we all know that that would have rolled off by now, but it's just kind of weird to look at it. And that, once again, that's not like a gripe about this vehicle. That's not me, like, you know, picking at this vehicle or anything like that. Really, it's more about just saying that it's just kind of odd, and I do wish that we were able to sort of keep that little piece without the rest of the body, and I feel like that would be really, really cool. But in any case, it does still do very, very well when it's put to the test in some of these mud obstacles. Now, of course, it's no mud truck, it's no over-the-top mega truck, it's nothing like that, but it really does actually do a good job of feeling like it was balanced well for the game environment at hand. Because once you start to get into some moderately deep mud, it can still make it, but you definitely have to pay attention to what you're doing. It's not like it's going to be super easy, it's not like it's going to be like, oh, it's just able to get through it, and there's no problem at all. You do have to think about it. You do have to think about the obstacles you're going to take on. You do have to think about the obstacles that are going to be in your way, and you do have to consider and think about the lines that you're going to take through them. However, when it comes to something like the dips obstacle, which you will see momentarily, it does actually have a pretty well-balanced center of gravity, and it doesn't really tip over until you make it tip over, as once again, you will see when we get to the dips obstacle. Now, I think at the end of the day, this thing does really bring a very fresh look to the SnowRunner. It really brings an element of, like, classics to this game, and, you know, CCM has been doing this for quite a while now, and he's really the only one in the mod space that is pretty well dedicated to these old school, super old school vehicles, classic vehicles almost. And as you can see, as we drive through the dips obstacle, I almost tipped it over there, but it just fell right back down when I backed off the speed a little bit. So you just gotta know when you can use the speed and when you can maybe not use the speed. And that's really the overall theme, I feel, of this particular truck. And as you'll see right up towards the end, we definitely find the limit of that that particular center of gravity position, as you can see. Now, fortunately, when this happened, help was not far away, and all we had to do was go ahead and beam ourselves back into the garage and grab a fairly familiar highway truck to run over here and just pull that thing back on its wheels. Now, at this point in the video, I would love for you guys to let me know if you have been using either this truck or any other CCM trucks, and if you've been enjoying them, because once again, they really do bring a very cool, very fresh feel and very fresh vibe to the game in that space of classic trucks. And I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of cool enjoyment out of those vehicles. And really, at the end of the day, if you really wanted to, you could do a modded campaign scenario with all classic vehicles. Like, if you wanted to literally have a campaign playthrough that was based within, like, the 1930s, using this guy's mods, you genuinely could, and that in itself is such an incredible thing to me. The fact that we have such a diverse modding space that you could base your whole campaign playthrough out of trucks from like the 20s and 30s and 40s. That's so incredibly freaking cool to me. Now, obviously, this Ford is not from that time period. It's just a default truck that I used to run out here and grab this thing and pull it back on its wheels. But I do think that classic trucks like the one we have been testing in this video do really have a great place here in SnowRunner, and I think seeing some almost classic style maps too would be really, really cool. Some maps that are almost designed around trucks of that era and you know, vehicles of that time period. And I think, you know, finding ones that are out in the wilderness or hidden or maybe in pieces or fallen apart would be such cool campaign objectives to have to maybe round up parts for these things and then bring them all back to a shop, put them together, and then all of a sudden you've restored a rig for yourself that you can now drive. I just think that would be such a cool dynamic to maybe put into a mod map or even a future campaign scenario. But at the end of the day, no test video would be complete without a good old bridge jump. Now, the bridge jump, normally if we were doing this test on PC, I would just go into the dev tools and switch gearboxes. But since we are not on PC, we're once again on consoles, we don't really have that ability. So what we are going to do, instead of driving all the way back to the garage, and also, you can't recover in testing grounds mode, so we can't really do that either. What we're going to do is we're going to leave the off-road gearbox in it, get to the top of the hill, and just put her in neutral and let gravity take it down the hill. Now, that can sometimes work just as well, if not better, than throwing the highway gearbox in it. The highway gearbox is just an easy way to get a tad bit more speed. Now, one of the things I noticed right off the bat when I sent this thing down the bridge jump was that it picked up speed pretty quick, and it actually jumped really, really flat, as you're about to see. Now, tagging the wall a little bit definitely slowed me down, I'm sure, but it jumped super flat and then completely blew out its entire suspension. Now, if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button if you enjoyed, and I will see you guys next time.